My school sent me to a hospitality job that turned out to be a trafficking ring. So I escaped and disappeared forever. Years later, my friend who I thought died saving me tracked me down to say they were still operating. I was 14 when Miss Thompson from the Career Center told me about a summer hospitality job. It paid $900 a week in cash, and all you had to do was move across the country by yourself and sleep in a warehouse with 40 other girls, all sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Well, it was a no-brainer because at the time my mom had cancer and we needed money. Bad. The red flag came at the airport when I met a lot of the girls for the time because we all had one thing in common: trauma. Stephanie was recently orphaned and needed the money for her little brother. Lily was a child of a single father who also had cancer. One way or another, we all had some sort of unexpected situation that left us desperate for money. Go figure. The plane ride to Texas was only 4 hours, but the drive afterwards was 3. I stared out the window as we drove further and further away from civilization, and the thing they did when we got there was take our phones and passports. I felt fear settle into my stomach, but then I thought of my mom lying on a bed with stage 3 leukemia, crying while eating nothing but a few tablespoons of soup every day. So I shook it off and just focused on what the lady was saying. She said we owed them for transport and housing, but we'd work it off. I still wasn't sure what we'd be doing. I expected to be some sort of collar or maybe a cleaner. Boy, was I wrong? At 8 p.m., Mr. Lee told us to look pretty. The older girls did the makeup for the younger ones. It was my time wearing hand clothing. Butterflies filled my stomach. I had always wanted to be a model, and now it was really happening. Or so I thought. At 9:45 p.m., we were all separated into groups based on age, race, and body type. And by the time the men came in at 10 p.m. sharp, we were all lined up against the wall, wearing nothing but undergarments, heels, and a heavy face of makeup. They were all around 30 or 40, wearing expensive suits. Greediness flooded their eyes. Then it happened. One of them pointed at me. I froze, and he picked me up with a smirk on his face. He then proceeded to steal my innocence over and over. I cried myself to sleep that night. Everything in me was hurting. I thought of my mom again and just hoped that my job would be enough for her to get better. The next morning, they told me I earned $50 but owed $200 for the clothes and makeup. That's when I understood we'd never make enough to leave. I was picked by them every single night. My life became gray and meaningless. After 2 weeks, they offered us bags of snow to lift our spirits. But really, I knew they were just trying to make us substance dependent, less resistance that way. I never said yes, and I never talked to any of the girls. I thought if I got attached, then it would make things worse. But after 2 months of living as a mute, I finally met Mika. Small brown eyes, always wore her hair in a bun, very pale skin. She was 16 and had been there 2 years already. She told me I reminded her of her little sister and promised to protect me. Soon, Mika became my lifeline. She taught me to hide money in my shoe lining and which guards to avoid. She showed me the weak spot in the fence behind the dumpsters where the metal was rusted through. We started planning. Mika had been counting guard rotations for months. Every Tuesday, the overnight guard drank himself unconscious by 3 a.m. We saved stolen bills for bus tickets. Mika said she'd rather die trying to escape than live another year there. And after 6 months, everything changed. I was fast asleep on the cold floor when I heard gunfire. Mika grabbed my hand and said this was our only chance. We ran through the main room where bodies were already dropping, made it to the fence. She boosted me up, and just as I was tasting freedom, I heard a gas. I turned around to see Mika's stomach pouring with red. I tried to climb back down, but she screamed at me to go. Another bullet hit the fence by my head. I left her lying in the dirt. I hid until dawn, then walked to a police station. The officer made a call while I talked, but then I saw it. A barcode on his right upper arm. That's when I knew he was one of them. I bolted from the station, my legs shaking as I pushed through the glass doors. The morning sun hit my face, but I barely felt it. My bare feet slapped against the hot pavement as I ran down the street, ignoring the stares from early morning commuters. A woman walking her dog stepped back when she saw me coming, pulling her pet closer. I turned into an alley and pressed myself against a brick wall, trying to catch my breath. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The officer would realize I was gone any they'd come looking. I needed to move, needed to get far away from here. A truck rumbled past the alley entrance and I saw the sign for a truck stop 3 blocks down. I forced myself to walk normally, keeping my head down. My feet were bleeding by the time I reached the parking lot full of 18-wheelers. Drivers were checking their loads, filling up with diesel, grabbing coffee from the convenience store. I approached a woman climbing down from a red Peterbilt. She had gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and worn jeans. Her face looked tired but kind. "Please," I said, my voice cracking. "I need a ride. Anywhere north. I can't pay, but I'll do whatever work you need." She looked me up and down. taking in my torn clothes and bloody feet. "How old are you, honey?" 18. I lied. She studied my face for a long moment. "Get in. I'm heading to Missouri." I climbed into the cab, sinking into the passenger seat. She handed me a bottle of water and a pack of crackers from her cooler. I tried to eat slowly, but my hands shook too much. "Bad situation?" she asked, pulling onto the highway. I nodded, unable to speak. "I won't ask questions, but there's a bus station in Kansas City. You got somewhere to go from there?" "My aunt," I whispered. "She lives in Minnesota." We drove in silence for hours. She stopped once to buy me a pair of flip-flops from a gas station. When we reached the bus station, she pressed $20 into my hand. "Whatever you're running from, don't look back," she said. I used the gas station bathroom to clean myself up as best I could. My reflection looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, tangled hair, bruises fading to yellow on my arms. I splashed cold water on my face and tried to make myself look normal. The collect call to Aunt Sarah took 3 tries before she accepted. I hadn't talked to her in 2 years. "It's me," I said when she answered. "I need help." "What happened? Where are you?" "Kansas City. The job didn't work out. Can you wire money for a bus ticket?" She sighed heavily. "Your mother is very sick. This isn't a good time." My throat closed up. "I know. Please, Aunt Sarah. I have nowhere else to go." Another long pause. "Fine, but you better explain everything when you get here." The bus ride took 14 hours. I stared out the window, watching farmland blur past, trying not to think about Micah bleeding in the dirt, trying not to think about anything at all. Sarah met me at the Minneapolis station. She looked older, grayer, worry lines etched deep around her mouth. She hugged me stiffly. "You look terrible," she said. We drove to her apartment in silence. It wasn't until we pulled into the parking lot that she spoke again. "Your mother passed away 3 days ago." The words hit me like a physical blow. I doubled over in the seat, gasping for air. Everything I'd endured, everything I'd survived, and I was too late. She died thinking I'd abandoned her. Sarah's apartment was small, just 1 bedroom. She set up an air mattress in the living room for me. I lay there that night staring at the ceiling, feeling completely empty. No tears came, just a hollow ache that settled into my bones. "You need to tell me what happened," Sarah said the next morning over instant coffee. "The job was a scam. They took our money. I had to leave." She frowned. "Why didn't you call sooner?" "They took our phones. You should have gone to the police." I almost laughed at that. I tried. It didn't help. She wanted more details, but I couldn't give them. How could I explain? How could I tell her the truth? So I stuck to vague answers until she finally gave up. "You'll need to enroll in school," she said, "and find a part-time job to help with expenses. I'm barely making rent as it is." I nodded, grateful she was letting me stay at all. The school enrollment was easier than expected. I used my middle name, Catherine, instead of told them my records were delayed due to a family emergency. They placed me in sophomore year based on my age. Though I'd missed so much, I might as well have been starting fresh. The few weeks were a blur. I sat in classes, understanding nothing. The other students seemed like aliens, worried about homework and crushes while I was still checking exits and flinching when male teachers got too close. I ate lunch alone in the bathroom stall. The pain started 3 weeks after I arrived, burning when I used the bathroom, constant pressure in my lower abdomen. I ignored it until I couldn't anymore. "You need to see a doctor," Sarah said when she found me curled up on the bathroom floor. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. There's a free clinic downtown. I'll take you Saturday." The clinic waiting room was packed. Crying babies, coughing elderly people, teenagers looking as miserable as I felt. When they finally called my name, a tired-looking nurse took my vitals. "What brings you in today?" "Stomach pain. And it burns when I pee." She asked more questions, had me pee in a cup. The doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, did an exam that made me shake uncontrollably. "You have a severe UTI," she said gently. "Have you been sexually active?" I stared at the floor. "Yes. We'll run some additional tests." "When was your last period?" I tried to think. Time had blurred together so much. "I don't know. Maybe 2 months ago?" The pregnancy test came back positive. The doctor explained options in a calm voice while I sat frozen, unable to process the words. She prescribed antibiotics for the infection and told me to come back in a week. I never made it to that appointment. 5 days later, I woke up to cramping so severe I could barely breathe. Blood soaked through my pajama pants. I stumbled to the school bathroom during period and collapsed in a stall. The nurse found me there an hour later, called an ambulance. At the hospital, they confirmed what I already knew. 11 weeks along, they said. Nothing they could do. "Did you know you were pregnant?" the emergency room doctor asked. "No," I lied. It seemed easier than explaining. Sarah picked me up that afternoon, her face tight with anger and worry. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tell you what, don't play dumb. The hospital told me everything. We drove home in silence. She didn't ask who the father was. I think she was afraid of the answer. I went back to school the next week, but focusing was impossible. Words swam on the page. Teachers' voices sounded like they were underwater. I'd sit in class and suddenly be back in that warehouse, men's hands on my skin. I'd snap back to find everyone staring at me. My grades reflected my mental state. Failed tests piled up. Teachers sent concerned notes home. Sarah grew increasingly frustrated. "You're not even trying," she said after another failed math exam. "I can't support you if you won't help yourself." "I am trying." "No, you're not. You sit in your room all day. You barely eat. You won't talk to me. What am I supposed to do with you?" The fights escalated. She'd yell about responsibility and chances. I'd retreat further into myself. One night, after a particularly bad argument about my report card, she said the words I'd been dreading. "Maybe you'd be better off in foster care. I can't do this anymore." The threat hung between us for days. I knew she meant it. Sarah was drowning too, working double shifts at the nursing home, barely keeping utilities on. I was just another burden. That's when I saw the help wanted sign at the Chinese restaurant 6 blocks away. The owner, Mr. Chen, barely spoke English, but he understood desperation. He hired me on the spot. Cash under the table, no questions asked. The work was brutal. 8 hours standing over industrial sinks, scalding water turning my hands raw. The kitchen stayed at 90 degrees even in winter, but every night I walked home with $40 in my pocket. I hid it in a shoebox under the air mattress, my escape fund growing slowly. School became an afterthought. I showed up enough to avoid truancy officers, but spent most classes with my head on the desk. The counselor called me in repeatedly. "Catherine, your teachers are concerned. Is everything okay at home?" "Everything's fine. Your grades suggest otherwise. You were enrolled as a capable student, but you're failing almost everything." I shrugged. What was the point of algebra when I could barely get through each day? Sarah's boyfriend, Benjamin, moved in after 6 months. He was tall, heavy-set, worked construction. And he ignored me, which was fine. But after a few weeks, I noticed him watching me. His eyes lingered too long when I walked to the bathroom in my pajamas. "You're filling out," he said one night when Sarah was at work, looking more like a woman. I stopped leaving my room when he was home, started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow. The lock on my door was flimsy, just a push button that could be popped with a credit card. He tested it one night, hammered after a poker game. The doorknob rattled at 2 a.m. I sat up, gripping the knife handle. "Catherine? You awake?" His words slurred together. I stayed silent, barely breathing. The knob rattled harder. "Come on, just want to talk. Sarah's home." I lied loudly. He mumbled something and stumbled away, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I left the next morning with my shoebox of cash and a backpack of clothes. Didn't leave a note. Sarah would be relieved anyway. My coworker at the restaurant, Catherine, let me crash on her couch. She lived with her boyfriend in a studio apartment that smelled like cat pee and cigarettes, but it was safe, and that's all that mattered. "You can stay 2 weeks, she said. "Then you need to find your own place." I picked up extra shifts, working doubles whenever possible. My hands cracked and bled from the constant water. My back ached constantly, but within 3 weeks, I had enough for a deposit on a room in a house with 5 other people. The room was tiny, just big enough for a twin mattress and a dresser. The bathroom was shared, always dirty. My housemates were a rotating cast of people scraping by. A single mom working 3 jobs, college dropouts, an old man who collected cans. When anyone asked about my past, I kept it simple. Parents died in a car accident, been on my own since. People didn't push. Everyone there had their own sad story. I dropped out of school officially on my 16th birthday, forged Sarah's signature on the withdrawal papers. The secretary barely glanced at them. "You sure about this, honey?" "I need to work full-time. Family stuff." She stamped the papers with a sympathetic look. Full-time at the restaurant meant 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. My world shrank to the kitchen, my room, and the liquor store on the corner. Weekends blurred into cheap vodka and blackouts. It was the only way to quiet the memories. Sometimes walking home late at night, I'd see a man who looked like Lee or one of the others. My heart would race, palms sweating, until I realized it was just my mind playing tricks. Every police car made me duck into alleys. Every knock on the door sent me into panic. The other dishwashers came and went, but I stayed. Mr. Chen promoted me to prep cook after a year. The pay was better, but the work was harder. Burns covered my arms from hot oil splatter. My fingers were permanently stained from chopping vegetables. I never made friends. Coworkers invited me out sometimes, but I always declined. Getting close to people meant questions, meant vulnerability. It was safer to stay isolated. Dating was out of the question. When men showed interest, I felt nothing but revulsion. A busboy named Benji asked me out repeatedly until I threatened him with a kitchen knife. He told everyone I was crazy. Maybe he was right. By 18, I had my own studio apartment. It was a dump. Roaches, broken heating, water stains on the ceiling, but it had a deadbolt and a chain lock. I installed 3 more locks myself, checked them obsessively before bed. The nightmares never stopped. I'd wake up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, phantom hands still on my skin. Some nights I didn't sleep at all, just sat by the window drinking until sunrise. I thought about Micah constantly, wondered if she survived, if she escaped. Part of me wanted to search for her, but I was too afraid. What if looking for her led them back to me? The years passed in a haze of work and alcohol. 19, 20, 21, same routine, same emptiness. I saved money obsessively, but had no plans for it. The future was a concept I couldn't grasp. There was only surviving each day. My 20th birthday came and went without fanfare. I worked a double shift, came home to my empty apartment, drank half a bottle of whiskey, stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Hollow cheeks, dead eyes, scars inside and out. This was my life now. Not living, just existing. The girl who wanted to be a model, who had dreams and hope, she died in that warehouse. What remained was just a shell, going through the motions. Sometimes I wondered if I should have stayed with Micah, should have died trying to save her instead of running. At least then it would be over. This half-life, this constant fear and emptiness, it felt like a different kind of prison. But every morning I got up, went to work, came home, repeated the cycle. Because despite everything, some small part of me kept fighting. Some tiny spark refused to be extinguished completely. I was washing dishes on a slow Tuesday night when everything changed. A new server started that week. A woman about my age with short black hair and a slight limp. She introduced herself as Catherine, but something about her voice made me freeze. She turned toward me and our eyes met across the steamy kitchen. The plate I was washing slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. Those brown eyes, that pale skin. My heart stopped. Mika? The word came out as a whisper. Her face went white. She glanced around the kitchen, checking who was watching, then rushed over to help me clean up the broken pieces. Not here, she whispered. So quiet I almost missed it. After shift, meet me at the dumpsters. The next 4 hours dragged by. My hands moved automatically through the motions of washing and drying, but my mind raced. Mika was alive. She'd found me. How? Why now? What did she want? When Mr. Chen finally let us go at midnight, I slipped out the back door. Mika was already there, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. In the dim light from the kitchen window, I could see the changes. Her face was harder, thinner. A scar ran from her left ear to her collarbone. I thought you were dead, I said. Almost was. She lifted her shirt slightly, showing a puckered scar on her stomach. Took 3 surgeries, spent months in the hospital. How did you find me? She took a long drag. Been looking for 2 years, checking restaurants, hotels, anywhere they might hire people without asking questions. When I saw the name Catherine on the schedule here, I had to check. We stood in silence. Part of me wanted to hug her, but something felt wrong. The way she kept checking over her shoulder, the tension in her shoulders. We need to talk, she said finally. But not here. You still live nearby? I hesitated. My apartment was my safe space. No one from work had ever been there. But this was Mika. She'd saved my life. 5 blocks north, I said. We walked in silence, staying in shadows. Every car that passed made us both tense. At my building, I unlocked the 3 deadbolts and let her in. She whistled low at the locks. Paranoid much? Can you blame me? She shook her head. No, I've got 4 on mine. I made instant coffee while she sat on my threadbare couch. In the harsh overhead light, I could see more scars, burn marks on her arms, a crooked finger that had healed wrong. What happened after I left? I asked, handing her a mug. Chaos. Turns out it was a rival operation trying to take over territory. Most of the guards died. The girls scattered. I played dead until the shooting stopped, then crawled to the road. Some trucker found me. Called 911. Did you tell the police? She laughed bitterly. Tried to. They said I was confused from blood loss. No evidence of a warehouse full of girls. By the time I got out of the hospital and could show them where, the place was cleaned out. Empty building. No trace we were ever there. My stomach churned. All those girls, where did they end up? But that's not why I'm here. Mika continued. She set down her mug, leaned forward. I've been tracking them. The operation, they're still running. Just moved locations. No. I stood up, backed away. No, I can't. I'm done with that. I have a life here. Do you? She gestured around my empty apartment. This is living, hiding in a box, washing dishes, drinking yourself to sleep. It's safe. It's not living, and it won't last. They're still looking for us, you know. The ones who got away,